Sure. Yeah, why don't you mention it then? Cool. Okay, we're ready? All right. Welcome, everyone, to the first meeting of 2020, which I think is going to be a great year. And
Cue fireworks.
yeah, that's right. January 6th, 2020. And we're going to start off with the roll call. So, Judy,
Yes, Hausch,
I am here.
McQueen. Here. Stokes.
Here.
Krieger.
Here.
Curlis.
Here.
Also present, Village Manager Josue Salmeron.
All right. So we're excited to begin this meeting by swearing in a new council member and two additional continuing awesome members. And so I believe you guys are gonna go down to the floor, and we've got Mayor Pam Canine doing that swearing in, which
think,
we're also excited about.
To keep with historical precedent, perhaps do one at a time so that
Oh, sure.
they can each get their hour in the sun.
Wow.
Or
Let's
Channel
go
5
less
is the
than an
case.
Actually, I feel like precedent had been that we did it together, but I like the individual thing as well.
Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
You're up.
Here we go.
As long as we get a group picture. So.
Right.
Absolutely. Laura, would you step right in front of the
Make-
podium for the proper angle for our friends at home? Very good. So we're starting with Laura Curlis tonight. Laura, if you raise your right hand. I solemnly affirm
I solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of
and
Ohio,
of the state of Ohio,
and that I will in all respects
and I will in all respects
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the charter and ordinances
of the charter and
of
ordinances
the Village of Yellow Springs,
of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Village
and
Council.
will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Village Council.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right.
Official.
12 easy payments.
24, actually.
Yeah.
24, good point.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much. And I'll hand these to you.
All right, thank you. All right, so I guess we're having Lisa come next.
Lisa? Very good. To Lisa Krieger, I solemnly affirm
I solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and obey the laws of the United
and
States
obey the laws of the United States
and the state of Ohio,
and the state of Ohio,
that I will in all respects
that I will in all respects
observe the provisions of the Charter
observe the provisions of the charter
and the ordinances of the Village
and the ordinance of the Village
of Yellow Springs,
of Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of Village Council.
the duties of the office of Village Council.
Congratulations. And
Mary Hennon's show I only made a little bit of a face about the laws.
I don't think the camera caught that.
Thank you.
This is exempt from the decorum.
right there, Councilwoman. Good. And for Mary Ann McQueen, I solemnly affirm
I solemnly affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Ohio,
and of the state of Ohio,
and that I will in all respects
and I will in all respects
observe the provisions
observe the provisions
of the Charter
of the charter
and the ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and the ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Village Council.
of the Village Council.
Congratulations.
You're
All
welcome.
right. All right, let's get all you guys down there for a picture with the mayor.
I don't see any guys.
See?
Guys is a generic.
Too
That's
soon,
right.
it's too
Thank you,
soon,
Mary Ann.
it's too soon, it's only January.
Let's get you amazing women down there. All right.
Is that the
Right.
It's the guys.
We are in the guise of guys. How should we sound?
Look like they're about to sing.
They probably could.
Most of them are on the world choir.
I think they should.
All right, thanks. All right, and I just want to say I am always excited about the next configuration of council. So welcome, Laura.
Thank
And,
you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here, and also Lisa and Mary Ann, thanks for continuing. So,
Thank you, Brian, for
all right.
being here.
Did I get thanks for just?
And
So-
to the community for their confidence in us.
So next up, we need to, as we do every time we have a new election, look at our president and vice president. And so the way we will do this, as we did last time, is we will first take nominations for president of council. We'll vote on that. And then we will follow up with nominations for vice president, vote on that as well. So I guess at this point, I will entertain a nomination for president of council.
I nominate you.
Okay,
Second.
All right.
If there's need for that.
all right. Do we have any other nominations? Okay,
Status quo.
then I guess all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I will abstain, I think is appropriate. Any opposed? Okay, next up, I'll entertain a motion for vice president of council.
I move that Mary Ann McQueen be voted in as vice president of council.
I'll second. Any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, all right. Next up, no. You're gonna say
Well,
something?
that was
Maybe we
the
should
No, I'm
post
ready
it.
to move on.
See? Next up, announcements.
I have one announcement. I want to acknowledge the passing of Tony Bent, who died recently at the age of 95, I believe. When I moved to Yellow Springs, he was on village council, and we've been trying to determine exactly how long he was on village council. It was somewhere between 18 to 20 years, probably the longest-serving council person since we've had the village manager form of government. At any rate, we are really indebted to Tony, and I'm so aware of the other people of his generation who have passed recently, and the loss that we've experienced in their passing. And what most saddens me is there's so many people who never, people who have moved here more recently who didn't know them and didn't know what they contributed. But we really owe Tony and the other matriarchs and patriarchs of Yellow Springs so much to make the village what it is today.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Yeah.
Very appropriate.
And I definitely know, since I've been on council, Tony's name has come up so many times, and, yeah, I mean, it is cool to sort of recognize that legacy, so. Okay, yeah, Kevin.
Kevin.
Yep, please, thanks. I have an acknowledgement. The 2019 Nguzo Saba Award, presented by the Yellow Springs Kwanzaa Planning Committee, has been awarded to the Yellow Springs Human Relations Commission. The 2019 Nguzo Saba Award is given to the past and present members of the Yellow Springs Human Relations Commission. HRC's purpose to promote harmony among the citizens of the village and to work to eliminate prejudice and discrimination within the village against any individual, group, because of race, religion, nationality, heritage, gender, age, physical disability, sexual orientation, or economic class, is a manifestation of the Nguzo Saba, the 7 Principles of Kwanzaa, the annual celebration of African American culture. In Swahili and English, the principles are umoja, unity. I'm not going to try to pronounce self-determination. I'm just going to skip and do the English ones. A collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. Awarded to the HRC on December 20th, 2019, signed by Kevin Magruder for the Wyatt Yellow Springs Kwanzaa Planning Committee. And I, as the council liaison to the Human Relations Commission, accepted the award, and I was proud to represent an extension of Village Council in doing so. And I hope that this is a vote of confidence for the Human Relations Commission as we consider the future of the various council commissions. Okay.
Thanks. And, yeah, I'd like to make sure we find a nice spot to, put that in the building, so,
Will do.
It's beautiful.
yeah, it's great. Okay, Lisa, did you wanna
Yeah,
talk about?
I'd like to mention some details about the Martin Luther King Day celebrations in the village that are on Monday, January 20th, so it will actually be before our meeting, because our meeting will shift to the next day. So I understand that the morning will begin at 9 o'clock at the Coretta Scott King Center for a reflection from 9 to 9:45 on Dr. King and his work. And then at 10 o'clock, people will convene at Subway for a walk. So there'll be a little bit of time to wrap up at Coretta Scott King Center and get over to the Subway area, and then there'll be the walk. And then at 11 o'clock, here at the John Bryan Center in the gym, will be the formal celebration event. The World House Choir will be singing. There'll be speakers. And the way the young people have those wonderful essay awards, it's always a great program. So those are the details, and we hope to see you all there.
And, as I always like to emphasize, Martin Luther King Jr. Day is one of the signature events for our village, one of the ones that we're really proud and happy to support any way that we can. And yeah, and it's also awesome just, have the World House Choir in the mix, as well as, just all the other things that we do to recognize that day. I have a few things I'll mention. New Year's Eve was awesome. All right, and I want to thank the Miami Township Fire and Rescue for hosting the event, our own police department for supporting that event, and our village team for everything they did to make sure that it went smoothly.
Thank you.
I also wanted to recognize, because there's an event right after this meeting that is highlighting Dave Chappelle's winning of the Mark Twain Prize, and I think that's a really exciting thing that it's I feel like that's sort of homebred and really amazing, and want to recognize someone from our own community that's done some great things in that regard. I also want to, I guess, on a down note, mention how disappointing it is that the Ohio legislature, by a vast majority, has written a letter to support this opposition against Roe v. Wade. And I would encourage our citizens and everybody listening to do whatever they can to at least, let these guys mostly know that this is unacceptable. And it's just really frustrating that, we continue to see things in a state that I think for the most part is progressing in a positive way, that our legislators continue to do things. I mean, Mary Ann, you might know that they voted up the, ban against, plastics. So, I mean, it's just nonstop. Our state legislature, I don't think is representing their constituents in the way that they should. But this anti-Roe v. Wade thing is really frustrating. And then, Josue, do you want to just mention Christmas tree pickup real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it up.
Thursday, Friday, I think
Yes,
it is.
yes. So as you know, we coordinate Christmas pickup for the residents. We've posted those dates on our Facebook, and I will pull those dates up as soon as I have them here. Do you have them, Judy?
I don't.
No wonder mine.
Well, I think it is that you leave them out on Thursday and Friday, if I'm not
Because the
mistaken.
Saturday's the pickup usually.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So we'll make sure that that information is out to all the residents. and
Yep.
get it up.
And then, it's always an initiative with our Boy Scouts, so, all right. So anyway, all right, so let's move into,
Brian,
Yes.
I
Oh,
have,
yeah.
I have one. You may be aware that the Homeland Security has issued a security bulletin. It's the National Terrorism Advisory Bulletin. This is in regards to recent activity with Iran, so I'll read the summary as it's released by Homeland Security. The United States designated Iran as a state sponsor of terrorism in 1984, and since then, Iran has actively engaged in or directed an array of violent and deadly acts against the United States and its citizens globally. The United States designated Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps a foreign terrorist organization on April 15 of 2019 for its direct involvement in terrorist plotting. This bulletin board was issued on January 4th, 2020 at 5:15 p.m. and it's in effect until January 18, 2020. This is directly related to the recent drone military initiative to eliminate a general of Iran. So the Homeland Security has issued the bulletin, and we're doing our due diligence to ensure that it's out there and for folks to be vigilant.
okay? Thanks,
So if you
Josue.
if you see anything, report it, 911, wherever you are.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, so we're gonna move into the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes from our last meeting on December 16th, and I will entertain a motion to approve.
There was a change.
Oh,
Did the council get the change in the minutes, Judy?
I did not put those out at the table.
Oh, okay, so,
You want to,
yeah,
So
I'd
let's
like
take it
to
off the, yep,
take it off the consent agenda because I asked for a
Mhm.
change.
okay. So do you wanna,
Yes, so in the minutes, it stated under citizens' concerns that I had written a letter to the editor, and that Mitzi Miller was responding to a letter to the editor that I had written. That was not the case. There was something in the paper that was actually implied that I had said something that I had not actually said. And Mitzi was responding to that in terms of parking for the senior apartments. So Judy did change, do you have that wording change?
well, I don't have it, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I
You-
don't, but I had some, Mitzi Miller responded to a comment which was attributed to Marianne McQueen calling for fewer parking regulations. And then I said, Miller highlighted her concerns about not having adequate parking spaces. So, because I was not clear what the misinformation might have been, so.
So I'm comfortable with that change.
Okay.
okay, so it's a motion to amend,
Yeah,
If you just, in fact, if you would adopt, then Laura can vote, but if you adopt the minutes as amended.
I move
then
to
you're-
adopt the minutes as amended.
I think I still have to abstain.
Not if
Yes.
you adopt. Only if you,
Well, I'll second. My understanding is that the real point of difference is that it wasn't a letter to an editor, it was in an article.
yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
okay? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm going to abstain. Thank you very much.
Abstention, all right. Okay, so next up, review of the agenda. So anything we need to add, change, delete?
I would ask that Resolution 2020-05 be moved to a future agenda for the reason that I think a lot of what's in that resolution we'll be discussing at the council retreat.
I would like to keep it to tonight.
2005. Okay. So do we want to vote on that, or do we want to keep it on the agenda?
Well, you got one to move.
Was it a motion?
I move to move that item to the
Okay, so it sounds like it's
January
a motion.
21st
Okay.
meeting.
So do I have a second? Okay, so if not, we'll keep it on the agenda. Anything else? Okay, Mary Ann, petitions and communications.
Yes. We had 4 communications. 3 involved the temporary traffic project. One from Lisa Crosswhite and one from Gila Pomerantz were concerned about comments made by the village manager and president of council in regard to the project that they thought were, comments they felt were inappropriate. Kathy Adams also had a letter which was more broadly concerned about the role of the school and drop-off, but also about the traffic project. And the last communication was from the Economic Sustainability Commission, and I'm not clear whether ESC wanted council approval or just wanted council to know that they were doing this work with the Ohio State at,
I can speak to that if that's helpful.
yeah.
So the Economic Sustainability Commission for some time has felt like we really could use some expertise in evaluating strategies, not what many small towns typically need, which is to enliven downtown, but instead to explore opportunities for business growth. And so we reached out to Ohio State, where there is some expertise that could assist us. And based on conversations with me and some members of Economic Sustainability, we asked for this very bare bones, high level pre-proposal. And I and the Economic Sustainability Commission wanted to bring this to council to signal that we're interested in exploring something like this. We're also interested in also contacting Wright State, where there also may be some expertise for some similar work. And we know that this is by no means a complete proposal. But before we move it forward, to either look at some other area entities that might be able to help us, and or look for a deeper, more fleshed out proposal, and before the retreat, we wanted to get this in front of the council, just so you knew that we were thinking along these lines, that we know we don't really have a staff person focused on economic development per se, but that we think with a fairly small investment, perhaps with a 50-50 split proposal with the community foundation, we may be able to engage some assistance. So that's really why this is here.
So is this something that should go on the agenda for tonight, or it's more just to kind of?
It's just a signal.
Okay.
I mean, if people want to discuss it more, you know, I would welcome discussion. You could email me ideas, but I guess the only thing that the Economic Sustainability Commission wanted to confirm is that, at least at a high level, we wouldn't be wasting our time or the time of experts by asking them to develop a more detailed proposal for something along these lines, exploring these questions of what, you know, what are we missing, what might we do more effectively to attract businesses that would contribute to our tax base.
So then, does it make sense that after our discussion on the 15th, like you referenced, that we would potentially put this on the agenda for the 21st, or?
Yeah, I think that would make sense,
Okay.
unless just off the top of everybody's head, you think, no, don't do anything more on this project.
Okay.
So would this fall into the already planned discussion for the retreat to discuss commission activities, or should it be a separate agenda item?
I think it contributes to it, but the commission felt that because we had this on hand already, and because we could explore other sources of expertise, that the commission asked me to get this out to the council as quickly as possible, knowing that the retreat agenda is really busy.
Well, I will say, at first glance, I was excited to see the proposal. I think it's pretty neat, if you will, that the commission, which is an extension of council, has extended itself yet again, for expertise. Certainly, there needs to be deeper discussion in terms of the breadth and depth of the proposal and whatever cost might be incurred on council's behalf. But in general, certainly, I think I'm excited about the prospect of doing something like this.
Were you going to say something, Laura?
Yeah, in reference to Resolution 2020-06, I think that this sort of study is a perfect first activity for the Development Corporation that we're going to possibly pass tonight as the agent for the village. I mean, so I think this fits in really well with the discussion of commissions, and I'd like to think about the idea of whether economic sustainability and the Development Corporation ought to be one and the same. We're always looking for people to serve on things, so it seems to make sense to me to do a Vulcan mind meld with those two organizations and put them together. And this may be, if we're going to fund this, which there is a cost to it, maybe those funds could go toward that.
Agree.
So in my mind, when I think about timeline, if we are going to put this on the agenda, we're going to have to make that decision before our retreat, right? Because the agenda goes out a couple days earlier. So,
Can I just jump in?
yeah.
I don't see this as creating a new or distinct agenda item. I just see it as a little piece of data for people to be aware of in terms of the overall conversation about commissions and what we're doing.
Sure. But I think ultimately the discussion will be around do we want to move forward with this? So, so it sounds like it doesn't need to be on the next agenda, and that it'll evolve out of our discussion on the 15th. So,
Okay.
which is great.
Thank you.
And I also agree with Kevin. That kind of initiative, I think, is something that this council appreciates. So, all right. Okay, let's move into legislation then. And we've got Resolution 2020-01, which we can do by title only. Please, Judy.
You bet. This is authorizing a sale during calendar year 2020 of municipally owned personal property which is not needed for public use or which is obsolete or unfit for the use for which it was acquired by internet auction pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 721.15D.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move.
I'd second.
All right, Josue?
Thank you, Brian. As you know, there's a standard resolution that we've passed previous years. This would allow us to sell any surplus equipment that we no longer have a use for. It's obsolete or unfit for use.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council? Questions or comments from citizens? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. So next up, and I know it is meant to be 2020-02. The agenda says 2019.
Oops. Unfortunately, in fact, the resolution itself is correct.
Good. All right, then I'll be able to sign it. So, Judy, can we do that by title only?
Yes, this is approving a salary adjustment for Josue Salmarone for continued service as village manager.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right. So I'll speak to this. When we hired Josue, we decided that we would do a 6-month evaluation. We established 10 quite ambitious goals, several of which were completed in a 6-month period, which says a lot. I specifically want to emphasize the fact that Josue collaborated with citizens to expand community solar. Was very exciting to council and I think to our community. Josue's leadership around the Vernay situation and moving that forward and protecting our interests have been, we've been all really happy about. And, you know, in general, to be able to accomplish anything in 6 months says a lot. But so many things have moved forward. I feel really good about our decision to bring Josue on as our village manager. You know, his commitment, his energy, his, you know, digging into things have been great. And, you know, we're continuing to navigate some of the more, you know, challenging aspects of, you know, what we need to do to keep our community sustainable. But anyway, I wholeheartedly support the not only cost of living adjustment, which I think every employee should get, but also the merit that Josue deserves. Mary Ann was part of the evaluation meeting with me, and I don't know if you want to say anything else?
Well, I think that when we hired Josue, we did that both appreciating his youth, his diverse background, and anticipated some out of the box thinking, which we all thought was needed for Yellow Springs at this point in time. And it's been great to work with you.
Thank you. Been great working with you.
Appreciate how you get things done. I appreciate your approachability. I like discussing and disagreeing with you. So very glad to have you here and your family.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you all.
All right. Any other comments from council?
I agree with everything that's been said.
All right. Any comments from citizens? Yeah, Mitzi.
My name's Mitzi Miller. I'd like to also, as a citizen of Yellow Springs for over 30-some years, thank our new village manager for his professionalism, his fairness, and his willingness to really take a look at situations in, again, a professional manner, but a fair manner. And I encourage citizens of Yellow Springs, if you have concerns, that you make an appointment with him, and he's more than willing to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitzi.
Thanks, Mitzi. Any other comments?
Chief Carlson?
Oh, wow.
Here, here.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, well, anyway, you know, we're excited about a continuous improvement in the future, and, you know, given the climate and everything else, there's a lot that we need to continue to do and be vigilant about. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next up we have Resolution 2020-03, and Judy, we can do that by title only as well.
All right, this is approving a 3-year employment contract and wage adjustment with the clerk of council.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I make this motion.
Second.
All right. So I'll speak to this as well. I mean, I can't say enough about Judy Kittner. You know, having worked with her for now 6 years, just her passion for the village, her understanding of the village, the amount of support she gives to council, and you know, just sort of everything she listens to and, sort of absorbs from our citizens and everyone else is incredible. The one thing that we've been really happy about is Judy stepping up in a lot of different ways, and we've said it before, but in particular, her being so actively involved in helping us with the recent village manager search is just one of many things that we can tout about, what Judy does. And yeah, I just love working with you. And I don't know if there are any other comments.
I'll add to that, because I was involved in the process. I've worked with a lot of people in my career, and I'm just so grateful almost every day, Judy, because there are things I don't know and things I can't find, which is another issue as far as improvements of the website and things like that. But when those things happen, you're always there. I appreciate your humor and also your seriousness. And I feel grateful to have the opportunity to work with you. You're such a wonderful gift to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here, here.
I'll say also that when you stepped into the director search leadership vacuum, that was critical because there was a vacuum and you did it. And
I love to vacuum.
I think it's I think it must be a difficult job balancing different things. You have to take a lot of stuff maybe, and you don't really, there's a limit to what you're able to do and move forward. So I appreciate the fact that you're in that role. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
That involves council members.
keeping us straight. Well, I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Judy for making the first part of my tenure here on council as enjoyable as it has been. Certainly the big things that we've talked about in terms of the village manager search, but also the little nitnoid things. I'll send her an email, send her a text, drop her a phone call, asking questions that maybe I should have known the answer to already. But I appreciate your patience and your candor and your love and concern for us as a group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Been a pleasure to work with. I know there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes that folks don't see. We're reading through ordinance and making sure that the vision and mission of the council is being properly interpreted and translated to the operations side. And that's certainly a teamwork within your role and our administration. So thank you for all the support that you provide the administration.
You're very welcome. Thanks, guys. Gosh.
Laura?
Ditto.
All right. Brian Carlson.
I'll be short.
Chief Carlson? Yes.
I just want to personally thank you, Judy. Judy has helped the police department in getting our records department together. A heartfelt thanks. We've come a long way. Judy also helped me in selecting the proper person in the police department to handle that role. They've been trained with the state now, and we have a good process in order now that's really stepped us up a few notches. I thank you very much.
And thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. So next up, we have Resolution 2020-04. Judy, let's go ahead and read that in full.
Okay, this is supporting Cresco's request for increased lighting allowance to compensate for decreased hours of daylight. Whereas Cresco Labs has requested a time extension to the blackout of their greenhouses from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. for their business located at 1130 Springs Way, Yellow Springs. And whereas Cresco has been diligent in complying with village ordinances regarding light pollution and had previously agreed to closure of their blackout curtains at 5 p.m. daily to avoid any light pollution from their grow operation. And whereas Cresco now realizes that closure of the blackout curtains prior to 7 p.m. during the shorter days of the year has a significant negative impact on their operations due to the stage in the life cycle of the plants at those times. Now therefore, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio hereby resolves that Section 1, the village's agreement with Cresco is hereby amended to permit blackout curtains to remain open as late as 7 p.m. as deemed necessary by Cresco. Section 2, this agreement shall be in full force and effect unless otherwise amended by council.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I'd so move.
Second.
Okay. Josue, are you going to kick this off?
Yes, I have a few things to add. As you know, this was discussed in detail during the previous council meeting with Hadardi and one of the Maxwell presenting on the science and the business need of this request. Our office fully supports this request, as not granting it will have a detrimental impact to the business. I want to add some additional details to the request. Over the last 2 weeks, we've monitored the closing. They've extended their closing over the last 18 days. Currents has started to close at 6:30, and it's about a 15 to 30-minute process, and they're fully closed by 7 p.m. During that period that they've been allowed to do this, we've had 0 complaints on the business operation, so no issues have been raised about the operations.
Okay, thanks, Josue.
I was driving by one evening and looked at it, and it's like, truly, the lights at Antioch Midwest are much more noticeable and maybe one might say offensive than seeing the sort of glow at Cresco.
Okay, Laura?
I just want to say I really appreciate Cresco's sensitivity to that issue. You will hear from me more than once that our skies need to be protected in day and night, so thank you for doing that.
Great. Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that, when, we sort of were going through that, like, period of figuring out, like, why Cresco would be such a good fit. Cresco was very sensitive to the odor potential, the light, potential, the environmental issues. And, that being said, I think we're not just looking at like a business issue, we're looking at the fact that almost nobody goes to bed at 7 p.m., except I heard Ari maybe does. But, so it's not a big impact on our community. And I think the fact that there haven't been complaints emphasizes that. Does council have any other questions or comments? Questions or comments from citizens? Okay. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, you can go to bed anytime.
I'll take you up.
All right, thanks, Ari. And also, thanks for your support of community service as well. I know that that's not something you guys can advertise, but we really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, we're happy to do it.
Yeah.
Cresco gives us the time to do it, and we love it. So,
Cool.
thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. Next up, we are looking at 2020-05, and Judy, let's go ahead and read that in full.
All right. This is approving recommended housing goals for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio. Whereas Council for the Village of Yellow Springs recognizes the need for housing units of all types in the village, and whereas the village staff commissioned a housing needs assessment to be performed by Bowen National Research to determine what those needs may be, and whereas village staff and council hosted several public meetings to gather input from residents and other stakeholders to define current housing needs and to determine what goals are reasonable and attainable, and whereas the Village Managers Housing Advisory Board, MHAB, has met regularly to discuss, research, and analyze information regarding housing needs and attainable housing goals, and whereas council seeks to further direct the actions of MHAB in service of fulfilling the housing goals, here iterated as Exhibit A, now therefore be it resolved that Section 1, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs does hereby endorse the housing goals as attached in Exhibit A and instructs the MHAB to adopt the following goals. Those are: complete the draft housing plan as a living document to be included in the updated online comprehensive land use plan, lead the housing concept design and development of the Glass Farm area and develop a timeline for the work, ensure that the Glass Farm area housing is informed by council's overall housing goals, in particular related to rental and affordable housing, collaborate with Antioch College, the Yellow Springs Schools, Home Inc., and the Yellow Springs Development Corporation in developing housing to meet community needs, support the creation of a stock of permanently affordable housing units through subsidies and other strategies, since the market alone cannot provide housing for moderate and lower income households critical to the economic, cultural, and educational needs of Yellow Springs. Section 2, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs does hereby instruct the MHAB to report regularly to council regarding any actions taken toward achievement of these goals.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Marianne?
Yes, I'd like to speak to this.
Yeah.
So this document is a bit confusing, I think, and suffers from the fact that it started before the holidays. There was some drop-off, some stuff got put in, and I didn't actually see it until I read it in the packet today. So I'd like to say that it involves a resolution that I had requested at the last meeting to give particular goals to the Housing Advisory Board. And those first 4 bullet points are the goals that I suggested for the Housing Advisory Board, and that council said yes on, and so it was put into a resolution. The 5th goal was not a goal that I had suggested for the Housing Advisory Board, but it came out of a discussion of the second document that is in this packet, which says Exhibit A to Resolution 2005. So that page, that second page, it contains 2 different resolutions that council passed in 2018. The first resolution was what is in italics, which is Yellow Springs Housing Vision and Value Statement. The second resolution was passed a month later in 2018 for the housing goals. So my intent at our last meeting was to have council reaffirm, well, in particular, the housing goals, the vision, not the vision, I felt that didn't need reaffirming, but the housing goals. So during our discussion at the last meeting, Brian said, I think that there should be something about permanently affordable housing. And you also, Brian, suggested changing the purpose statement to be broader. So and then if you turn to the 3rd page, that includes the changes that I made in response to what Brian had suggested, the housing goals. So I changed some of the wording in the purpose, and I felt that given that the vision statement includes the diversities that I think we want to have included, we didn't need to restate that in the purpose statement. So the purpose statement, the revised purpose statement that I submitted was to encourage greater housing choice as a strategy to build a diverse community, which includes young adults, families, and seniors, and represents persons from varied ethnic, racial, cultural, and social backgrounds and economic strata. And then the 4th bullet point there was what was the change that I made for the housing goals. The first housing goal statement that was approved in 2018 included the different income levels, different populations that we want to provide housing for. And then it also included that council understands that for much moderate and certainly almost all lower income housing, there would have to be subsidies provided. So I pulled out that wording and then included, instead of those clauses for those moderate and lower income limit, where the bullet point that says council will support the creation of a stock of permanently affordable housing units through subsidies and other strategies, since the market alone cannot provide housing for moderate and lower income households critical to the economic and cultural and educational needs of Yellow Springs. So, as I said, it gets a little confusing because there is the resolution that we're looking at now that gives the goals for the Housing Advisory Board, and then attaches as the exhibit both the original housing goal statement as well as the amended housing goal statement. my suggestion is that we omit the original housing goal statement from, which would be page 2, and just have Exhibit A be the changed housing goal statement that I had made. And also omit, well, we could omit page 4 probably.
That actually was not part of Exhibit A. That was a separate thing that you had sent, and I assumed you wanted included. That does get confusing because they kind of run together. So I'm only a little confused, but if you,
Yeah, it is confusing.
if you take all of Exhibit A away, and you're left with only that first page, is anything lost? Because we're endorsing the housing goals, and we know what those are. We have history of those housing goals. So I'm wondering that if you take all of that Exhibit A away and leave the resolution as it is, are you lacking anything informationally?
Well, the housing goals that we stated in 2018 were housing goals that council made. Now presumably, the Housing Advisory Board might be the mechanism that would work on those goals,
yeah.
but not necessarily. So and I was asking for a reaffirmation of those goals. So I don't know, it does get confusing, and I'm not suggesting that we necessarily need to get it all resolved today, but it is, I guess, involving several documents and important enough that I wanted to bring it to the table and say, oh, here is why it's
Well,
looking the way it is.
If we added in that last whereas, council seeks to further direct the action of the MPAB in service of fulfilling the housing goals passed by council in 2018, then we've covered it.
Yes, okay. And then just, so then which pages are going?
Only
gonna
the,
have-
only the first page,
Only
because
page
we're
one.
simply referencing
Okay.
by reference, the housing goals from 2018.
Okay, so would you say again, where would you be including that? Say,
So in the last whereas,
Uh-huh,
you'd add after the words housing goals, instead of saying here iterated as Exhibit A, you'd say housing goals passed by council in 2018.
oh, I see, yes, okay. I'm fine with that.
See,
So,
that's what we were thanking you for, Judy.
yeah,
But if I screwed up
I
badly
think
enough in
it's
the first
helpful
place-
because much of this has already been approved.
Yes.
And I think isn't reflected in the current resolution. And I think there needs to be continuity between the resolution and the goals document, so what you're proposing achieves that. And I also appreciate the clarity of the addition that there's both a goal to have a stock of permanently affordable housing units that we agree is important, but also other building at other economic levels.
yeah, and I'm definitely open to some conversation about if there needs to be different language, but just to affirm that clearly Yellow Springs needs more housing of all kinds. The reason for calling out affordable housing, and in particular permanently affordable housing, is that the market will not provide that. There's no way that a builder is going to be able to build new housing that, whether it's rental or home ownership, that can be affordable to people below 80% of area median income, and even in Yellow Springs, that would include people from 80% to 120% of area median income. It doesn't happen. And this is not just in Yellow Springs, this is nationwide. So, yes, we need to encourage the market to do what the market can do, and we need to find ways to support the market to encourage housing that the market cannot do. Because we want a community where young people can live here and where people that work at Current Cuisine and downtown can live here, and where seniors who are on limited income can live here, and new young families can live here, as well as people who are entrepreneurs and people who are making a good income and want a nice quality house. We want all of it.
Sure. Laura, did you have a comment?
I think there's a lot in here that I'd like to unpack more fully at the retreat before I vote for it. I think that I have real questions about the origination of the Manager's Housing Advisory Board, which really seems to be almost like a council commission, but we're not calling it a commission. And those folks, I don't think, come in and take an oath of office. I just have, I'm just wondering about that. And the word subsidies concerns me. I'd really like to be clear about that. If we are saying we, as village government, are going to be subsidizing permanently affordable housing.
No, that is.
Well, then why is the word in there? And it was in there a lot more in the other, and it was very confusing. I'm glad you pointed that out, Marion, because I read it a couple of times and
Yeah.
I'm like, these pages are saying a lot of the same stuff, so I don't know. So anyway.
So the reason why the word subsidy is in there is because if, for example, a house costs $250,000 to build, which is probably about what a modest house is going to cost now, in order for it to be affordable to someone who's making less than what I'm making maybe, it would have to cost maybe $150,000 or $175,000. So that difference between the $250,000 and the $175,000 is $75,000. That's called the gap. That gap needs to be filled. So that subsidy might come from the federal government, it might come from the state government, it might come from national, regional, or local nonprofits. Some of it might come from the village government, particularly as in kind, as we've done, extending utilities. It might come from volunteer labor. It might come from private individuals. It might come from anywhere, but that gap is considered a subsidy, however it comes. So no, it is not implying that the village is subsidizing it.
And then I have concerns about Glass Farm. I've truly never understood why it was a development target property, because about 50% of the soils there are highly hydric, as in wetlands, as in developers shouldn't be developing on wetlands. And I really have a deep concern about developing any, as a matter of fact, when that big solar project went up, that's over 100% hydric soil, some of it. And I'd really like to rethink that. And another theme that I will revisit quite often is 2019 became the year that we learned we are in a climate emergency. And as much as we are concerned about housing, I'd also like to talk about what can we do to help stop the climate emergency, like, plant 1,000 trees, maybe on Glass Farm. So what's the highest and best use for a wetland? Is it really housing? Because you can't do a whole lot of density, right? That's an issue on wetlands.
It is not a wetland, and we are, at our next Housing Advisory Board meeting, we are having a concept plan being presented. So it has been looked at by Greene County. Ken LeBlanc created a concept design that didn't have the buildings in it. And Aaron Sorrell is creating a concept design that we're going to look at. It is not a wetland. Yes, it does have a high water table, just similar to the other areas around the Glass Farm. But I don't think today, right now, is a time to get in discussion about whether we're going to have housing on the Glass Farm. And
Well, but this says we are, that we're going to
Yes.
insure it.
yes.
It sounds
Lisa?
like maybe there's just some catching up as a new council person with the
Right.
status of that analysis that maybe hasn't happened yet, that would help to answer some questions.
Well, I read the 2010 Glass Farm concept, and it does say it's wetland and that a very low-density housing at the most. And is that a good use, again? And I have hydric soil maps, and I'm happy to share them with the public.
Kevin, were you gonna say something?
Well, yeah, I don't know that I really need to say this, but I have sort of suggested in the past that, you know, there's Glass Farm, and then there are some adjacent property, I'll just say Kenny Farm for sake of argument. You know, and so there's a larger area under consideration. Any particular study, I think, may have just focused on that portion that's closest to the beaver dam. You know, so in terms of housing, I think when we say Glass Farm, we're probably thinking of a larger area that includes more than just the area that's been studied in the past. You know, so there is more area under consideration than maybe what one would think about when you hear Glass Farm.
So I generally think this resolution is clear and, you know, is directed towards action that doesn't preclude, you know, evaluating some of the other concerns that have been talked about. I guess my only question is, how, I mean, are we trying to kind of piece this together tonight, or do we want to tighten up what that Appendix A looks like? And, you know, look at it when we don't have like 4 pages of different things or whatever. I guess personally, I feel like council is, you know, committed to moving forward with this direction. So I guess I wonder, from your perspective, I mean, is this something that we can, like, clarify the things that are kind of confusing in the way it's in the packet, or are we
Well, I
needing to make a
think
decision?
Judy's point was well taken,
Mhm.
that by adding that 5th bullet that she added on the resolution regarding the permanently affordable housing, and referencing the resolutions that we passed in 2018, that
Mhm.
covers the things that we were concerned about.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything contradictory in my mind. I guess it's just more that, yeah, it's,
So, I mean, I am comfortable passing the resolution as amended.
I have one other, to Laura's point about the Housing Advisory Board. I appreciate the work that advisory boards can do as opposed to always forming another commission. My understanding, though, is that going into this next year, we are discussing a housing commission rather than an advisory board. Is that correct?
Not that I'm.
Or is this going
I
to stay an
didn't-
advisory
I
board?
didn't hear that.
I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just having a dream of,
I mean,
what the
that
new
could
commissions
be
are.
discussed.
you know, because that, I don't know why I thought we were converting into a commission, in which case, the Housing Advisory Board wouldn't be in service of fulfilling the housing goals. It would be more formalized as a commission. But maybe I'm just mixing it up with the list of possible new commissions, because there's many swirling around.
We had a brief conversation about turning the Housing Advisory Board to a commission. My take on it at the time, this was, I think, back in June, July, that I had recently come on board and looked at what the work that was underway. And there's significant efforts being done by the Housing Advisory Board to formalize or document a lot of the efforts around affordable housing, what conceptual designs could be executed. And so the timing, I felt, and I think my point at that time was that we should continue the track that we were working on, because we were getting ready for this comprehensive land use plan that was in the work. We had already accepted a bid, a proposal, and we were engaging someone to go into that work. And continuing some of that, the work of the Housing Advisory Board was relevant to the work with the comprehensive land use.
Thank you. I mean, because I think the timing of that is complicated, and I mean, I don't have a concern that the advisory board, that they're not sworn members of commissions, because one of the things that's really becoming clear to me, working with commissions, is that what matters is expertise, and that sometimes individuals that have high degrees of expertise want to bring their expertise, but not necessarily commit to a long-term monthly commitment on a commission. So to me, there is a benefit of engaging expertise as an advisory group, and I still consider that those individuals are committed to the well-being of the village and our community, even if they don't stand and take an oath.
And to your point on that, Lisa, if the expectation is for the manager to execute the work, by moving the advisory board to a commission, it puts a commission member citizen in charge of the process. As an advisory board, it still remains a village manager process. The outcome is influenced by those at the table, but the process to get the meeting going, following up on the task, that remains a village manager function. It should stay with the manager function if the expectation of the individual who does the work and carries out the work is the manager.
Good point.
Okay, do we have any comments from citizens? Megan?
Megan Bachman, Yellow Springs News. Since you're on the topic, I do have a concern about the commissions. I was emailing Judy about trying to get dates on my calendar. These meetings are not posted publicly for the most part. Maybe they occasionally are, they're not regularly. Can people apply to be a part of this commission? No. They're selected. How are they selected? Who's choosing? Who's at the table? What are those conversations like? The public is really kept out of it, and that's my concern. And I think that there's ways, if you want to keep it under the village manager, to make sure that you're doing some of the things that would be done if it were a commission. And I would encourage that to be done.
So, I mean, but just to be specific, we're talking about the Housing Advisory
Advisory
Board,
Board.
spiffs,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Right, isn't there some, I don't know if it was housing or some other managers advisory board?
We had talked about with, the, justice, system, I mean, we made a guarantee that those would be publicly announced meetings. The Housing Advisory Board has been set up in a different manner.
It's supposed to be publicly
Well,
announced.
they are, and I think that what Megan's referring to is per Sunshine Law, there's an annual calendar generally that's published that says here are when all the meetings are for the next year. When that changes, you're informed that it's changing, and then it is still noticed a week ahead of the meeting that the meeting is occurring. That's sort of per Sunshine Law. I don't have that scheduled for the Manager's Housing Advisory Board. It is always noticed, but it is not noticed as an annual thing that occurs monthly at these times, and you should expect those occurrences. So that's, I think, what Megan's getting to.
Not on the village website calendar. Maybe I'm not looking at the right place.
Well, we're sliding into discussions that are related but not totally on point to this resolution. I would like to say in regard to the Housing Advisory Board, and Lisa and I have been meeting and trying to think, how do we best get work done that needs to be done? So the Housing Advisory Board, the Vernay team that's working, both of those have staff at critical leadership points, as well as volunteers helping, and couldn't really be doing either of those things without critical staff and expertise. So that, to me, that is a reason for having it be under the village manager. And it also should be noted, we've had people come, people are invited, people are able to come to the meetings, we provide minutes. We're still getting some of the stuff coordinated, but we do have minutes, we're approving minutes.
Well, and legitimately, the Manager's Housing Advisory Board does not have to be publicly noticed. And I think that's part of the point. I need to do a better job of getting it on the village website, clearly. But as far as not having an annual calendar of those meetings, that is not a violation of Sunshine Law. Those meetings, in fact, don't have to be noticed. We are trying to do due diligence by noticing them regularly and enough in advance that anyone could attend. And I will commit to doing a better job of making sure those are on the village website. But again, I mean, I think that is the discussion Megan's raising is, should these be subject to sunshine law? And that's a broader discussion.
Well, I'd like to come back to the resolution because I'd like to either vote it up or
Sure.
down.
And so I agree with you. I don't think, I think the issue about whether managers advisory board is, the best option is not the issue here. What I keep circling around is just what this Exhibit A is. So the resolution itself, I like the integrity of, and it also like encompasses, like Kevin, what you said. I mean, it says the Glass Farm area, right? So that's all, handled here. I mean, and I also think these are goals that we've been talking about for a long time. So I guess my only thing is I just want to like make sure like our, documents continue to be clear. Which is why like a reference to an Exhibit A is confusing to me, and so maybe that needs to be taken out.
So it should say Exhibit A and then or not Exhibit A, but the resolution. It should say, that's what, Judy, you were
Right,
referencing.
what I was contemplating here was that we remove Exhibit A, it has gone away. All you have is that first page, but that in that last whereas, instead of referencing Exhibit A, you say housing goals passed by council in 2018. So that if one wants to reference those, they can look back at the goals passed in 2018, but there is no Exhibit A, we're not attaching
And you
it
could give that resolution, which is
here.
18.
Yeah. And that is in the packet most confusingly, I will admit, because
It's Resolution 2018-39.
yes,
That's the housing goal.
so that's the reference, yes.
So, because to me, I think this creates like a good focus of where we want to go. I guess I also don't think it precludes, some of the concerns that Laura mentioned that also need to be evaluated about like what that plan actually means. And, ultimately, I mean, if it's, really is problematic soil-wise, I mean, that needs to be contemplated. But that being said, I mean, I think we've always recognized this is an opportunity for affordable housing. So, yeah, so as long as we're clear about, we don't have like several versions of an Exhibit A in an amendment to this resolution, it makes sense to me. So, any other comments from council?
You also need to strike the Exhibit A language after Section 1.
Yep. Right,
Thank you.
yep. Any other comments from, Lauren?
This does seem confusing to me as a community member. And normally when there is a reading of a resolution, is there a second reading? Or is
Not for a
that-
resolution.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
kind of that, okay. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, the second, the alternative statement has been done by one person in council. Is that correct?
Which alternative statement?
It doesn't have, this is what I'm looking off of in the packet. Is that,
No, you're not looking at the resolution.
I'm not looking at the right thing?
No.
That might be
Go-
why I'm
go
confused.
Back up a little bit, because what is confusing there is
Okay.
that there were some attachments, there were some examples that I had included, but they're not exhibits, they're just for reference to past things that had been passed. So what you want to look at is Resolution 2020-05, the first page only, because what council's contemplating is removing any exhibits.
Right, okay. Okay, and so are you then suggesting that instead of the 5 down there, that they move to the 4?
No.
Okay, that's why it didn't make sense to me. Okay.
No, all of those bullets remain. Is that
Okay.
what you're asking?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I thought you were changing the language to a significant degree. Okay,
No, just clarifying that we're not going to look at exhibits of past work because that is confusing. So it's basically a standalone document.
okay. So as long as the message of the resolution remains the same, we're not taking bits and pieces out here and there. The other thing I'd like to say is obviously the composition of council has changed. And I, for one, in this village, am absolutely delighted that Laura Curlis is on the council. I think she brings a different level of information to the council that has been missing. And so I think that I, as a community member, am really listening to the concerns that she brings up. And I think if one of 5 of you has some questions or would like to have more deliberation about it, I think it's worthwhile of your time to spend that time to do that. So I would encourage you as a community member to take that time to have those conversations in your retreat and not to rush this right now. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Any other comments? Yes, Karen?
Karen McKee, resident. Because the glass farm is so close to my home, I'm curious, what do you mean by glass farm area? Can someone help me understand what area you are referring to?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
It refers to undeveloped properties. So the glass farm is one piece. There's the Kinney property. There's the Donahoe property.
Okay.
And then outside the village limits to the west is the Clem property, which is not in the village at this point. But it refers to the undeveloped areas.
It might be useful to translate that language into this statement.
I think we don't want to be including private properties in resolutions.
Maybe undeveloped as opposed to
Yeah, that,
a recommendation. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any other comments? Okay, so I think we
where are
should,
did anyone
I
make
think
a
we're,
resolution?
I mean,
Did anyone make
so-
a motion?
so we have made a motion, so we are gonna be voting. We've also, I think, amended, Judy, do you want to articulate what your recommended amendment was?
Yes, the amendment is that any Exhibit A is struck completely. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, fifth whereas strikes reference to Exhibit A and adds the words passed by council in 2018. Section 1 strikes the words as attached in Exhibit A, and that's it.
Okay, so I think we are going to,
So we may need another motion to approve as amended,
okay.
so that
So I guess first of all, I'll ask for a motion to
I
approve as
move that
amended.
we approve Resolution 220-05 as amended.
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. And then secondly, all those in favor of approving the resolution as amended, signify by saying aye. I guess, right? Because
Did we just do that?
we had
Well,
to make the
you
amendment
inco-
and then we,
you incorporated the amendment into the motion. Mary Ann did when she made
Okay.
the motion. So
Right, so
you're
we
you're
don't need a
covered, you're
second
good.
one. Okay,
Yep.
so we're good. All right. Okay, and finally, we have resolution 2020-06, and I think we should read this in full as well.
This is designating Yellow Springs, the Yellow Springs Development Corporation as an economic agent for the Village of Yellow Springs pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1724. Whereas in 2019, the Yellow Springs Development Corporation was incorporated to serve in conjunction with Yellow Springs Village Council and Miami Township trustees and other relevant stakeholders as a coordinating and planning nonprofit entity, providing funding and oversight for projects to further the economic and cultural vitality of the Yellow Springs community for businesses, educational institutions, health and wellness organizations, nonprofits, residential and infrastructure development, to advance the economic, community, commercial, and civic development in the Yellow Springs community, to grow and strengthen the tax base, and other such related purposes allowed by law. And whereas the Yellow Springs Development Corporation was formed as a statutory economic development corporation under Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1724, and whereas the Yellow Springs Development Corporation can enhance the industrial, commercial, distribution, and research development needs for the community, and whereas the Board of Trustees of the Yellow Springs Development Corporation and the Council for the Village of Yellow Springs have deemed it to be in the corporation's and the Village of Yellow Springs' best interests for the Yellow Springs Development Corporation to be an economic development corporation as defined by Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 1724.01. Now therefore be it resolved by the Village of Yellow Springs that Section 1, the Village of Yellow Springs hereby designates the Yellow Springs Development Corporation as an economic agent for the Village of Yellow Springs for the industrial, commercial, distribution, and research development in the Village of Yellow Springs. Section 2, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this body concerning and relating to the passage of this legislation were adopted in an open meeting of this body, and that all deliberations of this body and of any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were taken in meetings open to the public and in conformance with all legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, this resolution shall become effective immediately upon its adoption.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Lisa?
Well, I'm so excited to see this resolution coming to us. We have a small community, and the same key stakeholders involved in many opportunities. And so to have this opportunity to deeply and thoughtfully collaborate and coordinate and plan together, I think is a great opportunity for our community. And I think together, we'll be able to more powerfully and effectively communicate with each other, and then also take action in ways that optimize our scarce resources. So I'm very happy to have this Yellow Springs Development Corporation come into being. And I would also like to deeply thank Lisa Abel and the Yellow Springs Community Foundation, who have been acting as the convener for the Yellow Springs Development Corporation. They bring a level of thoughtful neutrality that's very powerful when you are bringing together stakeholders that really have the intention to collaborate, but it's not always easy. So I'm very, very grateful to the Community Foundation. They've been tremendously generous with their time and talent.
Great. And I don't think it hurts to reiterate, even though we've talked about this for a while now, that, you know, the stakeholder groups that are part of the YSDC are the schools, the township, the village, the chamber, the community foundation,
college.
Antioch College, and we also are planning to involve, you know, other stakeholders as we sort of formalize those meetings. So there's going to be at least one sort of at-large seat. And I think what's been really exciting is those meetings have been talking about some of the things that Elisa alluded to around coordinating levies and some of those aspects, but also residential development, economic development. I don't think it's a secret, so I hope not, that the transition of the fire station is one of the properties where there's a great opportunity for the Development Corporation to help support a new use of that space that is going to be complementary to the community. So this is really exciting stuff. You know, things are moving forward, and you know, I think this is something that we've been supporting all along. These, again, are meetings that are publicly announced. It's a designated community improvement corporation, so that means it falls under sunshine laws, and that was something that was really important to us as well. The last thing I'll say is, the village, just like all the other stakeholders, are never going to put any property, forward with the development corporation without there being a community process around doing that. So this does preserve all the things that our community wants with their elected officials. So, Laura, did you want to add something?
I definitely want to thank council and particularly Lisa Krieger. This is a huge moment in the history of the village because a development corporation, I've worked with them before, they have a lot of terrific statutory powers that they can use to help with redevelopment of properties that need rehabilitated. They've gone through one useful life, they need to go through another now. With housing development, and this is why I wanted to put off that resolution, because I can definitely see that the Development Corporation could have the Housing Committee, because again, it's hard to bring all those groups together, now you've brought them together. So I think it's a terrific thing.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, any other comments? Comments from citizens? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have no special reports, so citizens' concerns are up next. This is the time on the agenda where we welcome any comments about things that are not specifically on the agenda. So do we have any citizen concerns? Lauren?
Lori Miller. I just wanted to remind everybody that we still are taking contributions, donations to the fire and rescue, cold water rescue equipment fundraising. We still are not at our goal, and we could use more awareness about the lack of proper equipment in our community and the need to have to reach out to other fire departments that cause 10 minutes or so of delay in help getting to both people and our pets in case they're in bodies of very cold or icy water. So I encourage everybody to donate. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. And you guys were part of the YS Giving this year, was that right? Giving Tuesday? Seemed like I thought I donated to that, but anyway, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Any other citizen concerns? Okay, then we are going to move into old business, and first up is talking about our council retreat agenda. And I think overall, the draft agenda that we have reflects the comments that we talked about last time. Are there any other thoughts related to this?
I just really want to say I like the inversion.
Yeah.
When I read it, I thought, this really has a flow that I think makes more sense. So thank you for the changes.
Anything else? I guess the only thing that is not, I think it's implied but not directly called out that I had mentioned that I do want to talk about, or hopefully have space for, is to start to talk about the village council, village manager roles and relationships. So I don't know if that falls under like another bullet at 11,
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah,
Okay.
I would think so.
But I definitely want to, I know Laura has some thoughts about this. I have some thoughts about this. I'm sure Josue has some thoughts about it. But I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for that.
Well, would the goals be one bullet? I'm not sure what the overarching title would be, but particular goals, time management, roles,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure what agenda setting is about, but
We have rules at 1:45. I mean, probably we shouldn't really, or
Right.
at roles, we're going to talk about who's covering what commission, yeah?
Right, because that.
So that has to
rules-
follow the conversation of
Yeah,
effectiveness.
I meant rules vis-à-vis
Ah, I
village
see.
manager
I see.
and the attorney for that matter, village
Uh-huh.
manager, attorney, and clerk.
Right, right. Because I mean, I guess that's the other area is like, does 145 become like roles vis-a-vis everybody? So I don't know. What are you thinking, Lisa?
I think we need to talk about it. I just am not sure in what order.
Right. Well, my preference would be to have it earlier because, inevitably conversations go longer. And while I do want to have like, a healthy conversation about commissions, I'm still also not sure that like that needs 2 hours. So that would be my reason to like, put it as under 11. And then, yeah, and then Marianne, like you said, I mean, I guess we could, I think it's under goals though. I mean, right, I think that's okay as a heading because, part of like how we all work together is, related to that.
Well, I do have a question in that I know this year, unlike years past, you have an interest in having the village team present while council goals are discussed. And that means the village team is present for that conversation. I don't know if that's something you want to have necessarily. So,
So actually, that's a good point. So maybe, based on what Marianne was saying, maybe 11 to 12 is based on the discussion that we had from 9 to 11. We start to prioritize goals, then the
Council
village
goals.
team can leave, and we can talk about some of these other time management, agenda, whatever
Yeah.
things.
okay.
So I
Okay.
like that.
Okay,
Does that make
I'll,
sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll clean that up and send that out to everybody then.
Okay. Anything else about retreat?
I would like to explore the possibility of having an executive session during that time, short, primarily to provide updates on real estate transactions.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if, since everyone will be already meeting, is that an appropriate date that we could have a brief executive session?
So you're thinking at the end, or?
Could be at any point
Or
during the
maybe
day.
during the lunch part,
Could be. We're
like a half hour.
half hour, more than sufficient.
Well, we have a lot to cover, so, I hate to cut into the other time, so can people stay for an extra half hour? Okay.
Yes.
So let's do that from 3 to 3:30.
Okay.
So this is, the purpose of discussion would be pending
Real
real
estate.
estate transactions or, okay, I'll get it from you.
Great. Okay, anything else? All right, looks good.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, let's talk about the board and commission's assessment feedback. Marianne and Lisa.
All right.
Should I start?
Sure.
Okay.
So, back in September, we began to launch an evaluation of the commissions, thinking ahead about our retreat. And I understand that this isn't the first time in the history of time that the commissions were evaluated, but maybe it's been a while, so it's timely. There were some questions that went out. We did ask commissions to try to engage in a dialogue. My sense is that it wasn't always a dialogue. In some cases, we have feedback from individuals. In some cases, it seems like possibly the liaison was the primary author of the response to the question, but the goal was to assess the function and work of each commission. As is often the case, it's taken longer than anticipated to complete these evaluations, and part of that is because if it is done as a group process, it does take a couple of months at least to gather input and then talk about it and then I mean, speaking just as an example, for economic sustainability, there was a decision that had to be made about whether it would just be a amalgam of the disparate perspectives that individuals had, or if there was a goal to come to consensus, which is kind of a different purpose. So it was a good activity, but it takes a while. And then in addition to that feedback process, Judy's reaching out to the Ohio clerks via an email feedback tool just to see kind of what's the state of commissions in other municipalities. We are not hearing much back. What we have heard is that they don't have them. So that's kind of an interesting thing thus far. So we'll collect that information and bring what we can to the retreat if that's helpful. So there are some themes, although you can see from the inventory that there's quite a few commissions and committees that haven't been evaluated or where the evaluation is in process. In particular, that clear direction from council is absolutely imperative, and that the commissions need to understand what the council goals are early in the year, and also that the council can benefit from hearing about what the commissions are concerned about. So there's this both a push and pull relationship that's really important. To our earlier conversation about advisory boards and commissions, it's very difficult to move quickly in commissions because everything takes 2 months to even just say, let's have a conversation. So it really is a slow process. And the idea of subcommittees seems to be valued more so than a question I had asked is, well, maybe we shouldn't need commissions at all. Maybe we should just form project-based task forces, bringing people together with particular expertise when there's some specific work to be done. In general, though, that was not favored. It was more like using subcommittees where there were time-limited projects that could be spun off, where perhaps individuals who aren't sworn members of a commission could join other commission members and get involved with particular projects. But in general, it didn't seem like commission members were necessarily in favor of abolishing commissions in favor of only task forces. At least the ACC and HRC have struggled with membership and maintaining a quorum, which doesn't always reflect a lack of passion or value, but it does take away from the ability to move work forward. I'm hoping that at the retreat we can talk about some overlap between commissions. I agree with what Curlis said earlier about the ESC and the newly formed Yellow Springs development, and maybe Environmental Commission and Energy Board. There may be some relationship between planning. I mean, I think we need to streamline as much as we can for capacity purposes. So I hope we can look at that overlap really carefully during the retreat. It seems that commissions where there's active staff support and involvement promotes effectiveness. For example, economic development, the Vernay Project, and the Source Water Protection Plan. Having staff involvement helps maintain focus and alignment with staff and council. And for the most part, the village staff are not always attending the commissions. So I think that's something to think about, how better to leverage staff without having to keep staff at work until 9 o'clock at night, an additional 7 nights a month. You know, there's a trade-off there. So that's something I'd like to talk about. And the idea that there's an opportunity to have greater synergy between and among the commissions has come up a couple of times, so that we're not siloing. So the idea that maybe at some interval we could have an open meeting with a group where all members of commissions could come together to talk about what they're doing and the way that collaboration might occur. Simply just circulating minutes is not getting that done. So those are the preliminary themes captured on this document. Marianne, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that the big thing is a sense of disconnect between commissions, council, commissions, and other councils. If this were a nonprofit organization that I'm more familiar with, you know, you have the different subgroups, but they're intimately, generally connected with the nonprofit board. In this case, we have these commissions out there. Council, well, sometimes we're not so good about getting the minutes to council, for one thing. Council doesn't necessarily know what's happening in commissions. Commissions don't necessarily know what council is doing. And we break off, in some degrees arbitrarily, environmental, planning, arts and culture. We have these, but in real life, there's all this overlap. There's much more organicness. So how to have everyone that's involved in the village government understanding more, as we're doing with staff now. It seems that over the past 2 years or so, we're getting more, council is understanding more what staff are doing, and vice versa, hopefully. That needs to be happening. However we form or reform commissions, however that work is done using citizens, there needs to be more integration. And the other thing is, the Sunshine Law is such a puts such a damper on getting anything done.
Because of time.
For example, commission members cannot have group conversations outside of a commission meeting. It's considered a conversation. So it necessitates small groups getting together, which is not a bad thing to have small groups working on things and then bring them back to the commission, but it really does hamper ability to move things forward.
Were you going to say something?
Oh, some of the points I was going to make already mentioned, that there are some of these committees, there's staff assigned to them, and that sort of moves things along. Give you an example, the Library Commission, we've got a full bathroom renovation budgeted for the libraries, and that's a conversation we're going to have at the next Library Commission, and you know, we're going to get the ball rolling on that. The Environmental Commission, a lot of work has gone into the Vernay and moving that forward. So I certainly see a correlation between the work that's being done by those commissions and the resources assigned to them versus those that don't have staff resources assigned to them.
And there is, you know, that balance, because there was a point where, like, we, you know, had a staff person assigned to every commission, and then we started to, you know, question whether, you know, like Lisa was saying, is that a good, you know, use of resources? So, so I think that's something to think about.
And I see that being part of the conversation when we talk about the council manager role. That how do we allocate resources to the commissions, and how do we select those resources? I know for the Environmental Commission, another project we're taking on is the water source protection plan and the delineation zones. And there's the mandate, get this done, go look for the money, and we've already identified some pots of money to get that done. So certainly I look forward to having that conversation about what are the expectations of the resource allocation for the commissions.
So the other thing, and Laura, I mean, you can say more to this, but, you know, Laura and I, and, you know, and it's been a conversation before about sort of the committee structure versus commission structure. And I'm starting to, like, wrap my head a little bit more around, like, some of the differences of what that could be. But that's something that, you know, Laura, again, I want to encourage you to bring that into the conversation on the 15th, and I don't know if you want to say a few things now.
Yeah, I'll circulate a memo that I've been working on.
Cool.
About an idea.
Great.
And, you know, a number of the commissions also have been put on hiatus, which is like you've said, people either don't want to serve or it's hard to find people to serve. And anyway, I'm kind of been thinking a lot about restructuring.
Cool.
Ideas.
Great.
I guess one other thing that isn't on this update, but I really do want to mention it again, to plant the seed during the retreat, is the structure of our second monthly agenda of putting the commission discussions at the end of the meeting does not foster an effective discussion about the important work that's going on in the commissions. And if the work actually is important, then we need to find a way to give it more time and invert the agenda, because by 9:45 at night, we're all like, I hope you read the packet. I move we adjourn. Which sends it's not how we feel, you know? So I know that there's this structure, old business, new business, and we always follow that same cadence. But I would like to start talking about our commissions together when we're fresher at that meeting.
Well, and it occurs to me that, I mean, this is all leading towards those should be old business or new business topics, right? I mean, because if this is about adding capacity to achieve our goals, then it doesn't need to be a separate update. It needs to be at the heart of those important conversations. So I agree with you on that, but I think that's how that comes together in my mind. So, okay. All right. Any other questions or comments about this? Excellent. All right. Judy, are we able to pull up that PowerPoint?
We are.
Okay. And I don't think I'm going to need 15 minutes. But I will say, as Judy's pulling it up, I'm not sure that the fact that I didn't get much feedback means that I captured all the things we did in 2019. But
You did a great job.
thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you. I mean, Lisa did tell me I did a great job, and thank you.
Told you to change a picture.
Yes, yes.
Big
And so we did change some pictures. But I guess I just want to highlight a few things. I think, I'll just kind of preface by saying, at the end of the day, if council has any agenda, it's an agenda to make this village a better place, make it safer, bring more jobs, do everything else. And so, we should certainly be criticized when we maybe don't make the best decisions and we're not thinking about everything. But I've got to say, the negative side of putting out agenda, which means that you've got some sort of I guess sort of personal, whatever conflicts going on is never what I've seen since I've been on council. And rather what I've seen is that we always are trying to do our best. And so we want, to continue to get criticism and feedback to direct those decisions in the best way that we can. So that being said, 2019 was another year of doing tons of stuff, and that all is because we have a great village team who tolerates the many asks that the citizens and council have, and we appreciate it, and I'm really excited about the ways that we've moved forward. So as I said at our last meeting, I followed, and we can look at the next slide, the areas that we focused on in 2018, because I thought that would be a good way to sort of compare. And I do want to highlight in terms of our affordability goals. It is really amazing to talk to Colleen and the utilities team just about how the utility roundup, while it is not the biggest pot of money and it doesn't impact hundreds of people, the 12 or so people this year that were able to keep their utilities on, it's been huge. And it's one of the few things that really make me realize that we can make a difference. And the fact that we're at I think about 30% now of village residents that are participating is really exciting. So it's a cool thing. You know, it's not like all we can do, but it is like something that we have done. Our investment portfolio, I am so excited about, because Marianne and I spent 4 years basically seeing a return on our like millions of dollars of about $1,000 a year. I mean, like nothing. It was ridiculous. And so the fact that, you know, we've like really concentrated on this, and now we are like, you know, looking at, what is it, 100?
Over 150.
Yeah, I mean, 180 this, you know, past year. I mean, it's amazing, you know, and so that means a couple more sidewalks. It means like, you know, just a lot of different things that we can do. I mean, it's huge. And so I'm really happy that council has been more invested in that we have like a treasurer and we have a finance director that like are willing to look at this seriously. We've talked about the Development Corporation. I want to give a plug for the fact that the village decided to support the Glen Cottages project because we want to really bring more housing options online. And remember, Glen Cottages is a mixed housing unit, so it's got affordable, it's got market rate, it's about diversity, it's really cool. Community solar, we talked about that, amazing. We did the health assessment, and we're gonna like extend on that. And then the other thing is we're gonna look at how we can guarantee some more permanent affordability in the village. That's not the only thing we want to look at with our housing. We need to encourage families, we need to support the schools, but that's a big part of it. In terms of community and economic development, you know, I know there were only a few people that pushed back on it, but you know, at the end of the day, the community asked for a lodging tax, and this past year, we're looking at probably about 60,000. So this is a growing income stream. It supported sidewalk projects. Moving forward, we've mentioned things like a matching fund for downtown restoration and that sort of thing. I think the village is committed to the lodging tax being a reinvestment in our community. And you know, we're seeing some really good things there. We've got a great relationship with Greene County, so they've supported us for the last 2 years now. And one thing I haven't had a chance to mention is I found out that they're also looking at where you can request grants of up to $132,000 to like ask for, you know, specific projects. So we're definitely going to continue to develop our relationships with the county and work on our infrastructure projects. You know, we had talked about the Environmental Commission doing like great things. The policies around pesticides and herbicides are just one example of the great things that they're bringing forward. Their expertise that have helped us with navigating the Vernay situation and other things have also been great. So we have gotten a lot better about thinking about business retention and attraction. And so not only are we working with the chamber, but we've tightened up what kind of incentives that we can offer. And so we made a great pitch to keep EnviroFlight in town. I don't know if that will happen, but the work that we did around that has allowed us to talk with other businesses that need to expand or, you know, are having issues about what we can offer. And, you know, we want to make it clear that, you know, Yellow Springs is open for business, but of course those businesses need to fit our values. And so retaining the businesses that fit really well with our community make a lot of sense. And there are a lot of things that we can do. You know, we've shown that with, you know, things that we've done to encourage, you know, things like affordable housing. We've also done that with a variety of businesses. Again, the YSDC is mentioned here because of the idea that we've got village properties and properties that are in the village, like the, former fire station that we want to make sure fit with what our community wants. And the fact that we have the Energy Special Improvement District now, which we're waiting for the first taker to take advantage of, but this is a way to essentially finance energy, low-cost improvements that you can do over a 10-year period of time, can make a big difference. I know the schools are very interested in this. Antioch College is looking at this. There are, and it's also something that can apply to individual residents. But this is a program that essentially allows you to not only save costs in terms of your own energy needs, but also again spread that across through like property assessments, so that you don't have to make it all an upfront cost. So it's a great thing to do, and nice to see that we were able to get that on the books. So the next slide, in terms of infrastructure, we have committed to improving our infrastructure, and despite the lack of support from the federal or state government, we are looking at ways that we can continue to do this. It is not easy, and we're digging into our general fund right now, but at the same time, we're continuing to look at strategies to get more grants and that sort of thing. The active transportation plan, if we separate some people's feelings about the temporary transportation project, the active transportation plan allowed us to secure a new Safe Routes to School grant that is going to complete the sidewalk along Limestone, which is going to be huge. Every time I see people walking on the street, it scares me. It also teed up the project where we may be able to get a very significant transportation alternatives grant, which is mostly focused on Dayton Street and traffic calming, right? While a part of that's been criticized about the hike bike trail, the main part of that is about looking at ways that we can slow traffic coming into town. And I think a lot of us know that people fly down Dayton Street and don't slow down where they should. So getting a grant like that would be huge for us, and that's why you have a plan, all right? So we've talked about some like new trail projects. I mean, the one that I think is beautiful and maybe everyone doesn't recognize the importance of, that hike bike trail from Allen Street along 68 to get out to the Dollar General. I mean, I don't think people realize how many people don't have access to cars and do not have the ability to just easily transport themselves. So being able to walk safely or bike or whatever to get to other places in the village is huge. And I really appreciate our team taking that over. So we talked about Safe Routes to School, curbs and ramps. Wow, that was something that Miami Valley Regional Planning really appreciated our vision, funded that. It was really great. Mm-hmm. We continue to improve our sidewalks. We've got that commitment of $50,000 a year, and whatever other monies we can funnel to that, we will. Community solar, we're continuing to green our energy portfolio, which now ranges between 85 to 93% renewable energy, depending on the time of year. And we've done our stormwater and electric studies, so now we are going to figure out how we move forward with those. Justice system. So, I want to reiterate, because this has been ongoing, we've got that commitment to 40 hours of crisis intervention team training. That is not something that most police departments do. And having been a part of that training, it's very important in terms of understanding de-escalation strategies and whatnot. Implicit bias training is something that not just the PD has done, but the whole village has done. Council's participated in that as well. The scenario-based training is something that I was a big fan of, and I know that we've done it, and I assume we're gonna continue to do it. It's really effective and helps us to understand how we can do a better job in situations that may not have gone as well as they should have. Mayor's Court, you can see the reports. We are putting everything into Mayor's Court that can go to Mayor's Court, and that was a big initiative and something that I appreciate that the PD has been really supportive of. Can't say enough about Florence. Having a community outreach specialist, a social worker in a police department is very uncommon and something that a small municipality, I don't know that there are any examples of, but we're committed to it. Chief Carlson has said many times how much value that that position adds to the department. And the final thing I'll say is that, we are moving forward with the recommendations that make sense from the assessment to continue to improve our village justice system. Next slide. So it's official. We're a welcoming community. It's a tagline. So I was really happy that we started, committing as a village to supporting some of our signature events in a more active way. We've always been, big supporters of MLK Junior Day. I mean, we've supported other events as well. But if anyone was around for YS Pride this year, I think that the commitment that the village made to that event and will continue to support other signature events was huge. And I think it said a lot about our community, and it was a really great opportunity for people to experience what Yellow Springs is all about. The Gaunt bronze statue, so excited to have that on village property. There's going to be a mural associated with that. It was really cool that they wanted to be involved in the flour and sugar visits and deliveries this year. The community gallery, I said it stays fresh. You will notice that with our partnership with the Arts Council, they continue to create new exhibits, and it's just so fun to see. And then the Village Inspiration Design Award is one of my favorite things. John Hudson created the really nice Y sculpture that was recently at the Sunflower Field, and it's neat to see all the other recognitions that have happened. So I think the last thing that I want to talk about is our commitment to citizen involvement. I think the way that we look at community conversations is of high value and something that a lot of communities respect when they look at the things that we do. We want to continue that sort of engagement. I think also if you look at what we do in our meetings, we are committed to allowing plenty of time for citizen input, and that has not changed. It sometimes means that our meetings go a little bit longer. And so we're going to have to balance that with an initiative to maybe make our meetings 2 hours moving forward. So, which I think is great, but we want to continue that commitment to citizen input. We've got Sean in the mix. We are financially committed to making sure that our meetings are online, live. This was something that was talked about forever, and now you can get them on demand. You can see everything and always go back and say, hey, that's not what you said, because it's on video.
We still haven't got those bingo cards,
yes.
that we've talked about
So that's,
developing.
that was going to be a sub point.
Council bingo.
Yes, we are thinking about a bingo game. Commissions and advisory boards, we continue to use citizens to provide capacity, and we're going to continue to hone that. I think we are very open and accessible, and if anybody doesn't feel that way, I would say come talk to me, but maybe you wouldn't. But we put ourselves out there, and I've never worked with a team that spends more time on something that is basically pays pennies to the hour. We we're there, and we may not always agree, and we may not always be like, hand-holding on things, but we will definitely listen, and we will, and I feel like we try to respond and balance everybody's input. And we are continuing to look at how we can better utilize our social media and website to make village government accessible. So I guess I did use my 15 minutes, but with that, I just want to say that, the reason why I'm here is because I have a team that cares, and that's what energizes me. And I love this community, and what we want to continue to respond in whatever ways we can to make sure that we are improving quality of life and keeping our community sustainable, which is not an easy thing to do in the current environment. So I'll just end by saying it takes a village, so please help us do the right thing.
Excellent job.
All right, thank you.
you.
Yes.
I would like to first acknowledge you, Brian, for putting this amazing, wonderful document together and highlighting all of the things that the village government and the commissions and staff and council have done. I think it's very important. And I also think it's important that the community knows it. So in order for the community to know it, it has to get beyond this meeting and even beyond the television. And I have been talking to Josue during the year about it would be really great to have an end of the year report that, it would be too much to have a print report, I think. Although I think we could have some copies of a print report to include the budget. I don't know whether it should include the 2020 budget or the 2019 or both, using the pie charts, which is such an easy way for people to get where the money's going, where it's coming from, where it's going. And if there are other things that staff have done that are not included in this. But this is a great document. It's 7 pages, I think, with a couple more pages. Maybe it could be a 10-page, easy to read document, even easy to look at the financials, because the citizens need to see this. They need to know it.
Yes.
So, does council agree that something like, and to have it together and I guess accessible, easily accessible on our website? Is that what makes sense?
Yeah.
And maybe to have some print copies, like a print copy for the library, a print copy downstairs. I'm not sure, but I think it's worth putting a little bit more energy into this and then getting it out.
I agree. We'll work on something.
Right.
Thank you.
And then, just as a side note, council started doing our end of the year report last year. But the village manager and, team has always, done one. But I like what you're saying about like packaging it in, a way that we haven't done
having the
before.
pictures, having the bullet points,
Yep.
and if online, the bullet points could be linked.
Yeah.
If you're talking
Right.
about the housing plan or the sewer study or whatever, if there's something that could be linked to.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
Great.
Anything else? Okay. Questions?
I just thought maybe there's a grant for what you just talked about. And there's a grant out there that could pay for some of the publicity of that,
Hmm.
the education of the community members.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of startling to me that more people don't participate in their village government. And I don't know if there's a way to connect that, that sharing of information in some way.
It's interesting that you say that because I don't know if it's a grant per se, but we applied this year again for the Culture of Health Prize from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and the focus of that was about the community conversations and education around community health. And so if we win that prize, which I think is 25,000, I mean, I would like to invest it in something like what you're talking about. Were you going to say something, Mitzi?
I was,
Do you want to come up or?
For the
So,
audience
yeah.
listening online.
my name's Mitzi Miller. You know, I congratulate you too on the work you did. And I guess it bothers me that in our community, I think we need a day to celebrate Yellow Springs and the beautiful things that have been done this year. Maybe hold it at the elementary gymnasium. Lisa, have your bingo game right here. But find a way to encourage members of the community to come and gather together. And what a beautiful thing this would be to share there, and a little bit about the budget, but it's your golden opportunity. It's just, you have to find that way of bringing everybody together. And this is needed information that every community member needs, I would say. So I'd encourage council and our village manager to look at that. And it's a way to reconnect for everybody.
Right.
And I think that's a valid purpose and reason to consider that.
Thanks, Mitzi.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, so we've got one item of new business, which are a few board and commissions nominations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So, well, I guess, and it's both of us, huh? Kevin,
Yeah,
right?
each of us have one.
Yeah, so the Environmental Commission has a new applicant, Catherine Zimmerman, and I believe that the information about Catherine was at our last meeting, and then I spaced out nominating her. Catherine has recently moved back to Yellow Springs. She's made videos about a variety of things, most recently about backyard native gardens, and she's shown the video twice in Yellow Springs now, and that is particularly her interest, native plants, changing one's yard into using native plants and educating the community about how to do that, and perhaps having Yellow Springs be able then to be dedicated as a backyard native plant community. So we already have 7 members on the Environmental Commission, so she would be coming on as an alternate. And Kevin and I interviewed Catherine. So I would like to nominate her for the Environmental Commission.
Okay.
And I second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great.
So Mary Ann and I also met with Bob Partita, Robert Partita.
Great.
He's a former member of the community, left, went to Colorado for a few years and is back. He was one of the founders or co-founders of the Wise Pride Fest and Bubble Fest. He's worked with Home Inc. In the previous iteration. He's been involved with Oddfellows Lodge in the past, and we are at this point nominating him as a full member to Human Relations Commission.
Great. All right.
And
And I
I'll
think-
second that.
Great. And I think we all know Bob Partita pretty well, so that's great. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Excellent. Okay, so next up, Josue.
All right, thank you, Brian. Quick update on projects. The flower and sugar distribution honoring the request of William Gaunt has completed. We serve about 75 individuals. Yellow Springs News has published a news article on this. I encourage you all to read it if you haven't already done so. Sewer line work on root control. This is 16,000 feet of sewer line root control work is now complete. This work involved foaming the sewer lines to dissolve roots that have penetrated the sewer line. Our work on the sewer line inspection via cameras is underway. This work will continue through January. I have an announcement on sewers, this particular storm sewers that didn't occur until after we sent off the report. We discovered a new sinkhole behind the parking lot of the laundromat. I particularly reference this because we had discussed it, I think either in a work session or an executive session about a 2019 nightmare. And we've
yes.
discovered a new sinkhole in the first week, well, this was today. So we're working on getting estimates for the work. So you'll see some work activity behind the parking lot of the laundromat. So we're working on getting an estimate on resolving the issue. Right now, we put in a temporary solution where we closed off the sinkhole, the slated channel where the storm water drains into. We've closed that up and filled the hole with gravel and dirt. So that's only a temporary fix. There's more work to be done there. Midwest, you might have seen Midwest changing out poles on Dayton Street. That work is going on through January. AT&T is changing poles on Spillane Road. That's ongoing. And
Josue, can I ask a question about the poles? What differentiates whether Midwest or AT&T does a particular pole? Is AT&T changing up poles they own?
yes, so
Okay.
there's some poles, well, we have to be involved in whoever's changing pole. There's poles that we have lines on, and we have to be involved to removing and setting those lines up. In the poles of Midwest, these are the ones on Dayton Street, we have to lay out the work, plan the work, set up our primary electricity lines, take them off, and we change out Midwest, the contractor changes out the poles, and then the Midwest also sets up our lines. And there's others who are attached to the pole will come behind and set up their work. So there's some coordination that's involved.
And why are they changing out the poles?
They're bad. The ones on Dayton Street, they're bad, and the ones on Spillane are bad.
And are they changing them out with ones that are bigger or the same size?
They're the same specifications that our current poles are.
Thank you.
Just to Laura's point, there was a study of the poles done, what was it, 2 years ago? And I think like almost 100 of the poles in the village were deemed unsafe and needed to be repaired. So that's been an ongoing process, that the village does some and other.
Right, and a lot of these poles have been tagged. It's an issue of getting to them resources. There's some that our team has changed, and there's others we just have to contract that work out. There's been circumstance, I think a couple weeks ago, there was a neighbor that called to complain about internet service and her property, and the provider wouldn't touch the pole because it had been tagged for removal. So there's some poles that we've already tagged, but they escalate to the top of the list for some issue. Whether the conditions have changed or there's something that we didn't see as a priority, but some folks see a priority. In this particular case, the provider refused to touch the pole because it was tagged.
I'm really hoping we, to understand better how we control our right-of-ways and when other entities have a right to put whatever in the right-of-ways. Because what I've been seeing is significantly bigger poles that are going up into the sky above the tree tops.
Yes.
And it's, you know, I consider it visual trash. I think it takes up a beautiful view and puts wires, and really, it's mainly for the benefit, seems to me, of third parties, because when you have bigger poles, you have more real estate in the sky that you can
Right.
sell to other people, and we don't benefit.
Right.
And I'd really like to understand the economics of it and our ability to control it or not.
Johnny and I had this conversation about pole and the business of poles. Right now, there's agreements where we can attach to someone else's pole in the village, and they attach to ours, and there's pole attachment agreements. And the current business is that they net out, that they use ours as much as we use theirs. And so there's no economic opportunity there for us. And we've also discussed the possibility of taking over all the poles. What would it take for us to take ownership of all of our poles in a right of way? And there's finances to consider. A pole can cost anywhere between $1,000 and $8,000 to take over. And that's, you know, when we've got a tight budget, that's not something that rises to the top of something that we want to engage in and take over all of our poles. But you raise a good point, that there is, that by us not owning those poles, we give up some autonomy on what goes on those poles by having these pole attachment agreements that are in the current state.
See, my understanding was one of the reasons we have such a big amount of money in the electric fund that we hold back is because, I was under the impression we did own most of those poles, because you hold that money in case there's a tornado, for example. You can't insure against it. It takes out a bunch of them. We have the money to replace those
Right.
poles. So you're under the impression we don't own any of the poles?
No, we own
Many of them.
many
Many
of
of
the
them.
poles, yes.
Thank
But we don't own all of our poles.
And what are the agreements for those poles to be there? I just have a feeling those agreements are long lost and ought to be renewed, just like I think we've
One
had
is
some.
80, one is 80 years old.
I know,
Yeah.
right? So I just think it needs to be looked at.
Right.
One more thing on your plate there, Josue.
Yes, yes, thank you. All right, we're looking to start up and resume new projects in mid-2020. The update on the Vernay project, part of this update includes the new updates on the gas intrusion and contamination or exposure risk at the unnamed creek. So we're in receipt of the memo from TRC and Vernay addressing the concerns of vapor intrusion into private homes near the Vernay property. According to the memo, the multiple rounds of sampling over several seasons demonstrate that occupied buildings near the site are not impacted by COCs. These are chemicals of concerns, and the soil vapor migrating from the Vernay site. And no additional sampling is warranted as existing data is comprehensive and biased to locations closest to the Vernay site or most likely to be potentially impacted by vapor intrusion from the Vernay site. The second memo is concerning or related to the concern of contaminants discharging into the unnamed creek. According to the memo, the potential human recreator exposures to sediment and surface water in the creek would not exceed levels deemed acceptable by the U.S. EPA. As for the risk to non-human flora and fauna, the memo states that ecological non-human flora and fauna exposures to sediment and surface water in the creek would not exceed levels deemed acceptable by the U.S. EPA. The memos are attached to the packet as reference material, and we have a meeting scheduled with the U.S. EPA where we discuss these memo and ask for the EPA's position on these matter, and that's meeting scheduled for late January. Any questions on those two things? Okay, the other conversation that we've had in our most recent EPA meetings regarding the water source protection, we're looking to get a more formal position on what's happening with a water source. One of the arguments that Vernay has made is that the groundwater where the contaminants exist at the Vernay site is in the Cedarville aquifer, and right below it is an aquitard, an impermeable barrier between that aquifer and the aquifer that feeds our water source, which is the Brassfield aquifer. And so we're looking for a more formal position on the EPA regarding that. The initial conversation we had with them in the last meeting is that they accept the science behind that argument, but we want a stronger position.
That was a primary reason, however, that the Environmental Commission was recommending a reassessment of the catchment area of our water supply, because it does seem to, there may be an overlap, regardless of whether the two water sources interact with each other, there may be an overlap at the extreme northern terminus of our water supply catchment area, right at where the Vernay plume is. There may be.
Correct. One of the accomplishments in 2019 that Brian references, the GIS mapping of our resources. On the GIS, we've also mapped the hot spots at the Vernay property and the plume, and we've overlaid our water capture zones on that GIS map. So we can see our utilities and the hot spots of the Vernay property and our capture zone. So we'll see where's their potential overlap. And we published a map of this overlap at the last community meeting regarding the Vernay project or remediation plan. So we now have updated maps that we can see this overlap, at least from the top view. We can't see what's happening in the underground. The investment committee update, we've started working with a new investment consultant and the Raymond James platform. As a result, we purchased 2 CDs during this reporting period, and a detailed report will be provided with the quarterly report during that reporting period. Administrative updates, we're in the process of closing financial books for 2019 and loading the 2020 budget in our financial systems. We've executed new contracts for services in 2020, including auditing services for GAAP accounting method in 2020. Staff will have a retreat on January 8th. This is the management team will participate in the retreat for 2020. The office will remain open during that day. Quick update on the ad hoc personnel committee. We have concluded the work of the ad hoc personnel committee and taken action on the findings. We thank the committee members and participants for their participation in this process. The safety and well-being of our residents and visitors is our primary responsibility. In this spirit, we want to ensure that we offer the best service possible. As a result of the findings, we will provide additional training to police supervisors and patrol officers. Comprehensive land use open house. We will have an open house for the comprehensive land use plan on January 23rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Mills Lawn Auditorium. We want your input. Please come and participate in updating our comprehensive land use plan for the village. And attached is a postcard image of the announcement. Community highlights, Brian already mentioned this. We had a successful New Year's Eve event. Thank you to the MTFR, the Yellow Springs Police, and the Public Works for partnering on this event. We've had a hearty crowd to celebrate 2019 and bring in the new year. And we have attached 2 photos.
Yeah, see.
Folks enjoying their time.
Yeah, where was Kevin? Across the street. So, taking the picture. All
All
right,
right, any questions?
looks good. Let's
Thank
just
you.
make sure that we're promoting the 23rd, right? We're gonna get that on.
Yes, that's on the
Facebook
website. We have a
page.
Facebook event
Oh, good.
that's gone out, so, yes.
Cool.
And we'll put it in the newspaper.
All right. Any questions? Okay. Judy?
I do not have a report.
Okay. All right. So then we are finally on.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, I have one more announcement to make. The Christmas tree pickup is on Wednesday, the 8th, and Thursday, the 9th. So please put your Christmas tree on the curbside, and our team will pick them up.
Where do the trees go after they're picked up?
I will get the detailed response to that, where do they go and what we do with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Hopefully to a environmentally friendly place.
Yes, I'm sure we do, and I just don't want to speak uninformed, so.
Yes. Okay, so last thing on our agenda is future agenda items. So anything in particular? I know we highlighted a few things. Anything else we didn't mention?
So the Board and Commission end-of-year reports is just me corralling people to come in over the
Right.
period of the next couple months, and I'll make sure that that happens. You will notice that the 21st, I put council rules and procedures, and my expectation was that I would just include that existing document for you to start a discussion if that's useful. This is when you do it, new council rewrites the council, or looks again at the council rules and procedures.
Right.
And then council goals can come on whenever you want me to put them on.
I mean, we'll definitely want to do a debrief of our retreat, which may include like a draft goals document. But I would think, initially it's going to be a debrief from our retreat.
Okay,
We can strike the art and culture presentation.
okay.
Okay. We're going to be able to talk about Rex?
Yes, we reached out to the AMP community and started that conversation.
Okay,
So I
good.
think it's a matter of how deep do you want to go into. We've got a process-oriented question and answer, and then an economic value question. There's also something we might want to consider is the community value of holding on to our recs.
Yep. Okay. Any other future agenda items at this point? Okay. And then I guess the other thing is, you know, we will on the 21st need to decide what our commitments are around boards, commissions, committees, or whatever.
Oh, yes, of course.
So that'll be a piece of that.
Board and commission assignments, right.
We'll start that at the retreat though, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll get that on.
Well, all right. We've met our 2.5-hour commitment, and it'll be interesting to see if we can get to a 2-hour meeting in the future. So I think Megan wouldn't mind that either. So, all right. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second that.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Happy New Year. Thanks, everyone.
New Year.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Here you go, Brian.
All right.
Gotta redo the.
Endless meeting.
Yeah.